On the bend of the Mississippi River, where the river runs east and west, you'll find the Quad Cities, a bi-state region spanning Iowa and Illinois that is home to nearly 500,000 people. Ranked as one of the most affordable places to live by U.S. News and World Report in 2022, the area boasts a sense of economic security rooted in agricultural innovation, corporate operations, and defense and logistics. Since 1848, the region has been home to the John Deere Global Headquarters, adding to the overall economic appeal of the area, and recent investments in riverfront development have made the Quad Cities a great place to live for many people. But as is true with most places in this country, the safety and security that are the foundation of Midwestern living are not characteristics that are available to everyone who calls this place home. And this is especially true when it comes to the youth.
It's a mess. It is a mess.
The youth population, particularly the population of Scott County, the county that comprises half of the Quad Cities, is in decline, and yet the youth incarceration rate in both Iowa as a whole and Scott County in particular is higher than the national average.
Right now we don't do anything for the youth but build bigger prisons. So what are we doing for them? What are we doing for them right now?
The word that's coming to my mind right now is hopelessness.
To me, it's just pretty simple common sense. You know, it's the story sometimes of a lot of different situations we get into as individuals, as families, as businesses. If you keep doing the same thing over and over, why would you expect any different results? If you just keep locking them up, why do you expect the problem to get any better? You're not trying to fix it. You're just locking it up and get rid of them. Bad. That's a bad way to do this.
But one local organization has committed themselves to finding a different way, a better way to intervene on behalf of the youth in this community. That organization is Family Resources, a social services agency with a 173-year history of caring for the most marginalized people in this Midwestern region.
When we as in the collective, movement, built services for victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, what have you, we didn't build it for everyone. In the early years, in the early 70s, it was really built for middle-class white women. And we left people that look like us. And it really left a lot of individuals out. And what we know now is if you look at the trajectory of how we enacted laws, how we put really concrete things in place to address issues around violence, we also disproportionately affected communities of color. And you can see a correlation with Black and brown people, particularly men, being incarcerated along the lines of domestic violence laws being enacted. So what that told us was the system isn't working for everyone, it's working for a few. And to think about tearing down a system that has been built for many, many years and rebuilding it is really, really hard. Change is hard. But if you build a system to make sure that the last girl really can be anyone who is your most marginalized, has the most challenges, has the most disadvantages. When you build a system that no matter what can serve the last girl, then you've built a system for everyone. And so our kids on our campus, the kids that we serve, are the last girls. Whether they're boys or girls, the gender doesn't matter. Those are our last girls because they're the kids that end up in a system that right now isn't necessarily putting them on a path to success. And I think it's because that system was built a long time ago, much like the anti-violence movement was built a long time ago, to serve a population that has changed and evolved over the years. And that system is also disproportionately affecting our communities of color. We all see that with the kids who we have incarcerated, who are in juvenile detention, who are in our foster group care programs, who are in foster homes, not just the group care homes. So when you think about the concept of the last girl and rebuilding a system that will serve the last girl, we're thinking about that in the anti-violence movement, but we at Family Resources are trying to apply that concept to also the youth that we're serving in our foster group care and just in our community.
Given the rich history of this organization and the breadth of experience born from this history, Family Resources knows that the youth incarceration rate and the behaviors that lead to that statistic aren't a result of children who are fundamentally flawed. There is much more going on here than what we see on the surface, so to get a good look, it's important to span out and take in the whole picture, starting with what we see when it comes to meeting basic needs.
And if you go through and look, there's basic needs still being missed.
And if you don't have basic needs, you're going to try and fill those, and probably not in the best way, because there is no community effort to boost those people up and give them their basic needs. I think that's ultimate. I mean, it's education, it's housing, it's food, shelter, I mean, all of those types of things. And we just don't do a good job as a community of recognizing people don't have that on a daily basis.
I needed stability. I needed parents, stable parents. I needed a change in environment. I needed someone to help me educationally. I needed food. I needed water. All those things that were available, but I didn't have, or my family didn't have the resources to get all the time. I needed safe housing. All the things that you need for daily living, I needed those things, and I didn't have them on a consistent basis.
Like when kids go, well, she was saying, like when kids go to school and not dressing well, you know, they start acting up, you know, they're not feeling themselves.
I can tell when a kid is going to have a rough day, like they come in, their clothes aren't clean, or, you know, their shoes are dirty, or they wearing the same outfit that they had on maybe yesterday or the day before. So I can always tell when one of my students, you know, when they're gonna have a bad day, try to pull them in, but then how do you start that conversation with them? Because then you're overstepping some boundaries, you know, but you can definitely tell when they're having a rough day. Yeah.
I mean, people should have a place to call their own, and they should be able to feed themselves. And if it comes through, you know, food banks or other resources, I mean, we just need to get it done. People need homes and food.
But it doesn't stop with basic needs. When basic needs aren't being met, it is also likely that there is substantial trauma in the home, often from the earliest ages.
You know, the story that you hear, whether it be the abuse at home or you know, just the fighting at night, they not sleeping at night, and you got to counsel them through that so that they can feel better about themselves and be ready to move forward because they're so
Can't do
exhausted.
homework if there's no lights.
Right.
I think it's you know, we get a lot of kids that we label with BD, ED, behavior disorder or emotionally disorder. And that's simply not the case. I was not BD. I acted out because I was hungry. I wasn't clean. I didn't sleep. Mom and dad argued all night, or maybe dad worked all week and then we didn't see him from a Friday to the next Tuesday. It was just that there was no stability. And then I was the oldest kid, so I felt like I had to be the protector of everybody. Then once my mother was ill from the time I was 9 on up till she's still dealing with her health issues, but I became like the parent in that house, the protector in that house at 9. So.
One of the little boys here, I mean, he probably does not think I'm supposed to call him a little boy, he's a teenager, but he would tell these stories about his house growing up, and he'd be like, there would never be any food. Like, if you open the cupboard, it'd just be drugs. There's no food in the house. And like, clearly if that's your childhood, like, stealing somebody's car is not a big freaking deal. Like, you're just trying to figure out, how do I feed my 4-year-old sister, you know? You're just trying to fight through every single day. So that didn't just start like when they're 12 or 14.
We have to, as a community, just make a 180-degree turn on how we engage these families. Because if we don't, they will sit. And the problems, it might be a minor substance abuse problem now. In 10 years, it's not. When we had the car theft issues back in 2017, 18, 19, a little bit today, when we had that, we went out and interviewed families and we interviewed kids. And I'd ask a 15-year-old, what are you going to do when you're 25? And that kid would say, I may not be here when I'm 20. These kids go to their friends' funerals on a pretty regular basis, and it's scary. But we need to get to these young kids and these at-risk families way before that, before they give up hope. If we can invest them in the community, it's going to be hard for someone to get them to hop in a stolen car or to carry a gun to school. They have to be invested, and they have to be invested honestly and in a way that they really feel that someone's looking out for them and they have and is looking at their strengths as well as their needs.
A story a while ago, this was maybe 10 years or so ago, we were doing a community service at one of the homeless shelters or like residencies and whatnot through a day program. I remember driving down there and the kid getting upset and, about having to go to the community service. And I was like, well, look at it as you're doing a good deed for someone. You're showing empathy towards someone and compassion and care. And his response to me was, why should I care about anyone? No one's ever cared about me. So whether that's reality or not, it was his reality because it was his perception. And that stuck with me as 10 years later, and thinking about that and how does someone show an attribute that's never been shown to them, or even if they feel like it's never been shown to them, and I think, like I said, I think, does it start at home? Of course, it always starts at home, and we can kind of take that stance and be like, not my child, not my problem, but then it becomes our problem because these are children of our community, it becomes our problem. Then when that child's breaking into our home or stealing our car or committing crimes in our neighborhood, and I would like for us to take more of a preventative stance in the sense of, it's not my child, but it is my problem because this is a member of the community. And if we are truly a community and a body, when one part of the body is hurting, it can affect the rest of the body.
And so deeply committed to understanding that there is no such thing as other people's children, Family Resources set out to find the places in their lives where early intervention might help change their trajectory. But to do this, they needed help from an important new partner.
Well, the project started with the Community Foundation and the Morency family. The Morencies have for years had an interest in children and youth who are aging out of foster care. In fact, they have scholarships they've set up for children and youth who are aging out and going on with their education. So we knew they had an interest in this, and we knew they had supported Family Resources in the past, and they were looking to go deeper in their philanthropy. They wanted to take it to the next level and see what they could do to move a needle.
Talking about the history of our family with Family Resources is one of my interesting stories, because we had supported Family Resources for many, many years in smaller financial donations. And then that just kept growing every year. And I will never forget the meeting with Nicole, one of our very first meetings, and I didn't know Nicole real well. And we walked in and said, we would really like to provide money to upgrade and develop that off-site campus you have for young people that are aging out of foster. Great, we'll get together and talk about that. And Nicole came and we talked about it, and it became evident real quickly that that wasn't what she really wanted. And she started to talk about some of the bigger problems in foster care, or in young people, really, not foster care, was
The system in general.
yeah, where can we best serve younger people?
And then I was out for a run one day, and I kept thinking about what Steve and Kathy said about how they wanted to provide a transformational gift. And I kept thinking about the kids that are in our care, and I've been doing this work now for 14 years, not all of it in child welfare, but it really all ties together, the work that we do at Family Resources. And I just kept thinking, if we really want to be transformational, why are we designing a program that's helping kids at the end of their continuum of services? And why aren't we trying to transform the system that eventually gets them there? How do we go back and intervene and think beyond the services that we already provide? And I started trying to think about it from a perspective of, where Steve and Kathy come from. And, they're in the for-profit world and manufacturing businesses. And nonprofits don't get the luxury of research and design. We don't get the luxury of thinking beyond contracts and stipulations and requirements that we're given through grants. And if we really could just take a step back and help families and youth and individuals in a really innovative and more flexible way, would we do it differently than what we're doing now? And that idea just kept, running around in my head, like, how do we really transform the system? So that's where we got. We already had a proposal for youth transitional housing put together. We had all the data, all of the information. We had done all the research. And I totally took it another direction. And I even said that to Steve and Kathy and Ryan and Kylie when we met. I said, this is a real risk. I know you, when we met, we talked about this, but hear me out. And so I proposed just investing in family resources and giving us time to think differently about how we truly impact and help youth and families and do it earlier. And I didn't have an answer. I said, what we need is time. We need time, and we need to use the people that we already have at Family Resources who have expertise in this field, who have been in this field for a long time, who know the system, who've seen the flaws, who've seen the gaps, who've had to work through those challenges, who've had to help families jump through hoops to get their kids back. We have those resources available, but we're not putting them towards thinking differently about how we help kids and families. And they went for it.
Nicole told us what she'd like to do, and I instantly said, okay, let's do that. Here's our family belief, and that is that everybody deserves a fair chance, an equal chance. Equal may not be quite the right word, but certainly a better chance than a lot of young people have.
And so began the Morenci Transformational Project, an 18-month research and development effort intended to help rally and redirect the resources of this community toward early intervention in the lives of families.
I think the project is about stepping in and intervening at the beginning, like before kids get all the way down the path and have had several traumatic things happen. Can we somehow intervene when there is the first inkling that, we need a little bit of extra support here, we need a little bit of extra help? And what are the ways to do that effectively? What is the evidence around that?
I would definitely say that we need to look past the behavior and dig deeper and see what the real cause of the behavior is. Look at the conditions of the home, look at the conditions of the parents before them. I think we need to go further back than what we are. We are on the surface layer, and I think there's so many layers of things that could be affecting the behavior of not only the family, but this child that we're looking at.
If the beginning of a problem can be identified at a very young age and rectified, you're not going to have that problem.
The project had some main players who were tasked with focusing only on this work so that the research and development could be seen through to completion.
I'm Stephanie Hernandez, and I'm the director of our Child Welfare Juvenile Justice Services. I've been with Family Resources a little over 19 years, and majority of those years have been spent in foster group care.
So I'm Emily. I work as the Survivor Services Director most of the time. Right now I'm pulled off to do this project, so we're all shifting gears, but my master's degree is in counseling. However, I started my career in the Quad Cities at Family Resources as a child advocate at the domestic violence shelter. That was a little more than 20 years ago. This is the third time I've been at Family Resources, and I've worked at several social service agencies in the Quad Cities, primarily working with youth and families who are exposed to trauma in various capacities. And that's where I'm at now. I actually came back when we got our homicide and other violent crimes program because I'd worked a lot with grief and trauma, and it felt like a really good transition with the other survivor services stuff I had done with violent crime in the past. So
I was at-risk youth growing up. Grew up in very impoverished conditions. experienced some of the things that I know the youth experience now that are in our programs or that are struggling in our communities and things like that. So I feel like I can relate to them as far as I knew what I needed, just didn't know how to get to those things or didn't have the resources to get to those things at that time. And then as I grew up and grew out of that, I had the willpower to change some things. So I did, and I work with behavior disordered and emotionally disordered children for 21 years with the Rock Island School District, which gave me a lot of experience dealing with kids with those issues and with some of those experiences or growing up in a certain type of environment that produced some of those conditions. And I just kind of learned how they coped and how resourceful they were, and why, some of the reasons as to why. So I feel like that experience, as well as growing up in that kind of environment, can help with this project.
And so they began by asking the communities most in need of early intervention questions about what they were missing and how they could be more helpful. This is what they learned.
My name is Marcus Starling.
Group foster care is a contract with the state of Iowa, so there's about 15 other providers across the state, but we provide court-ordered residential services to youth, typically between the ages of 10 and 17. So they're court-ordered, so it's not voluntary, so kids don't come here like summer camp and they're excited to be here. They're coming because of the reaction or the behaviors that have resulted from the trauma they've experienced. In their home, in the community, in school. And so typically they're here for about 6 to 8 months. We provide therapy services, survivor services. So we address their trauma, their mental health, their behavior issues. We ensure that they're going to school, their medical care is being taken care of.
2008 North Park Mall. Allegedly, I was accused of discharging a firearm and injuring another person. And the results of that was I was sent to the Annie Whitmire facility, the Leslie program to be exact. Well, I wish it was more, things for me to do that was affordable because, like basketball, football, all the regular things kids like to do. Some families is not fortunate as other families where they can't afford jerseys or can't afford camps or nothing like that. So if the community all came together and opened up some type of rec center or something that, that help kids out that need, help in them areas, I feel like, that part would have helped me a lot because, my mom didn't have money and stuff to, spend on, certain things like basketball shoes and basketball jerseys and stuff like that, and like I said, camps and all that. So that kind of like made me like go more towards the streets and find things to do in the streets where there's nothing good to do in the streets. So if we just had something that was affordable for the kids that's in need, I feel like that'll help out a lot.
Hi, I'm Desiree Miller.
Hi, I'm Keith Sutton.
So at my daily job is working with at-risk youth. So my job is to keep them in school, make sure they're showing up, checking their attendance, checking grades. If they're on probation and the intermediate level, then I'm basically making sure they're there, making sure they do community service and bring counseling, providing anything that they need while they're in the building.
So I work down at Scott County Detention Center. So what my role is more counseling, more trying to get kids back, on their feet, basically trying to get them reality, make sure, maybe help them with, try to do a job application, help them with resume, just little minor stuff like that. Because some kids not there long, so we really just try to build a good relationship and try to feed them positive things and just, tell them what they can do and try to give them that resource and that network they can get when they get out the juvie. So we try to help them with outside sources, and it can be with the Y Achievers, it can be with the Y. It can be helping them get a job when they get out, or maybe get a referral so they can go to Safer Foundation and get their HISET, so stuff like that. So
I think resources to have their kids looked after and taken care of when they're at work or when they can't be at home with them. I think that's the biggest thing, is them making sure that they feel supported when they go to work and they know that their kid is in a safe place until they're able to get to them. I think that's the biggest thing.
Programs, they need it. I mean, like you say, mom want to know their kids safe. They want to make sure their kids eating, stuff like that. So they need protection. So the programs.
I know growing up, we had a lot of different things like the Solutions program, which they are bringing back, but it's a little harder for the kids to get into it, but they're starting to branch out again and go back into the schools like it was when I was growing up. I don't think there's a lot of activities, like most of the kids are involved, or they like sports, but some of the kids get into trouble and they're not able to stay on the sports teams in school because of all the stipulations to it. So therefore, the one thing they actually enjoy is getting taken away from them. So they've turned to the streets or hanging out with friends and not, doing school and things like that. So I think that we need to start bringing back more extracurricular activities for the kids outside of school. And especially for those who don't make the school teams, we need to start having activities for them based on the things they like: basketball, football. They're not able to do those things anymore if they can't make it through the school day or because of the stipulation. So we have to start finding funding to get these kids involved in positive things rather than being out on the streets.
The longer they listened, the clearer it became that the same themes would emerge time and time again. These kids, our kids, like all kids, are craving connection.
Well, we are both educators in the Rock Island School District. I've 30 years of experience. She's like 25 years. So we've been involved in the community. We are from Rock Island, so we've been involved in the community forever. We do a lot of things outside of our schools. We go into our communities. We talk with kids, we play with kids, we go on bike rides with them when we're not in session with kids. We participate in a lot of things outside of our buildings as well. And we've organized activities for our students at our buildings, whether it be after school program, organizing sports activities, because we're pretty much sports orientated. So we do a lot of those types of things, taking our kids, take them out to dinner, giving them rewards for outstanding behaviors, things like that.
We do a lot with the poor community. We give away a lot of shoes, a lot of clothing, a lot of hygiene products. So we also take them in, get their hair done. What else have we
feed
done?
them. I even had hair cutting. I even did barbershop in my class, so we cut hair. She would give the young girls tutorials on how to maintain everything from brushing your teeth to oral hygiene to physical bathing. And because we come from a community where there are a lot of diverse learners, I can tell you we could bring some counseling. They need that. They need some outlets of people they can talk to, but trust people who are going to come in and care about them, because kids might not be able to understand everything that's in this book, but they can understand us and they can read our body language and they know if you're blowing smoke or if you're bringing the smoke.
Hello, my name is Jake Klipsch and I am the Instructional Leadership Director for the Davenport Schools. We have, our regular school counselors are excellent, but the needs are beyond what they can typically even offer. It really goes into, that's where that, it's a spectrum of like, there's the school counseling and then there's like community support, social services, and the need, it kind of, our counselors are supposed to be delivering lessons to students on a variety of different things and, on digital citizenship and how to be, whatever those things might be. And so they're going in teaching lessons, and they're also trying to kind of be a social worker, and so that is definitely a need, is that we could easily connect another person into every one of our buildings, and they would be busy.
Bring some people in who are genuinely want to be there for the kids, not there just to collect the money. Because we know in our field alone, and even as you guys, you're not in this for the money, because we're not getting paid enough to do what we do.
Pennies.
Period. As the kids would say, we don't get paid enough. So when we talk about bringing in programs, we got to make sure these are genuine people that we're bringing in. You can't just say, I'm about to get this job and working with these kids, and then at the end of the day, you going off on these kids and you're not, building them. You're tearing them down. We need those kind of people to build that structure to get our kids, on track.
Turning this thing around with these young kids or whatever, you gotta be able to understand them and understand the situations they come from and the way they was taught and the way they think. Because, you know, you never know what a person go through from birth and up until the time you meet them. So that's really just like the big thing to me is just like understanding people.
I think that's a big thing too, just being able to relate, finding somebody that's able to relate to them, because I hear a lot that I'm able to do this because these kids respect me, because I look like them, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be, everybody should find a way to relate to these kids. If you're working in this field or, you know, doing anything with these kids, you should be able to relate to these kids, because otherwise, why are you in this field if you're not relating to them? It shouldn't be relating to them based on color or because I dress like them or because I build relationship with these kids. These kids don't know me from day one when they walk into the schools. I find an end to these kids. I figure out what they like, and I walk up and I just start interrupting the conversations like, hey, oh, what are we talking about today? You know, I find a way to get into the conversation, and then these kids start, oh, she's cool. You know, I can talk to her. So that's the biggest thing is, yes, building that relationship, relating to the kids.
You have to do it all the time. Miss Thomas Johnson and Miss T can tell you that I'm always saying something positive to kids. I don't care if you got a booger on the side of your head. You are so handsome this morning. Oh, look at that beautiful face. I'm building them up constantly. I don't care if they got 4 eyeballs. Ting, ting, ting. You are so beautiful. Your eyes are so beautiful. You can see the world. And they believe it, whether I believe it or not.
Yes, they believe it.
I say it enough that they believe it. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Just because I look like this don't mean I'm doing anything. I can be the nicest person in the world. I can have everything together, but just because I'm wearing this hat a certain way and my pants might be a little too low on my waist doesn't mean that you got a criminal on your hands.
I can tell you, you're beautiful all day. That's gonna make you smile. You're smiling right now because you're beautiful. But I'm telling you this every day where you might wake up saying, I'm the ugly duckling. No, you're beautiful. Mm-hmm. You're handsome. You know, they make you smile. You feel good about it. And that's what it's about, is making these kids feel good so they want to do something else to get something out of you again. They come at you all the time. Like, what's she gonna say today? Yeah, it's huge. So when we talk about bringing in people to run these programs, you gotta be able to build a relationship with the kids. And it's gotta be genuine.
And they didn't just stop with the stories. They dug deeper into the data to be sure they were headed the right direction and enlisted more vital community partners in helping to determine the next steps.
Hi, I'm Melissa Scher at St. Ambrose University Public Health Program with the Institute for Person-Centered Care. Creating the questionnaire is really an important part because it's like with any data, it's the garbage in, garbage out thing. If you don't ask the questions in the way, you're not going to get the information that you want. So that was really an important process for us to work with you directly, because you're kind of the technical experts, and then we can help you frame the questions to get the data that you want so you can, kind of learn what you really want to learn. And so that was a big part of creating that. And so the questionnaire, I think, turned out to be pretty rigorous because the results that came back were stuff that you wanted to know. Things about access and availability and how services might be here, but individuals had a hard time accessing them. And what came out really strongly was that was linked to the social determinants of health and issues related to housing and childcare and transport. So again, the services exist in our community, but people had access issues. The other thing that came out very strongly was the focus on prevention and how we can reinforce our focus on prevention to avoid accessing these high-level services in the first place. And then again, the other gap was, once we're accessing, how can we get kids out of the services and in a safe place, or how can we divert them or change services so the higher level services, like associated with juvenile justice or even foster care, we can do it in a way that's more supportive to the child and his or her family.
The results of the qualitative study pointed in the same direction as the stories. This community has to find a way to meet the basic needs of these children, and it has to be done through genuine connection.
Yeah, the 3 I think that came out most strongly are linked to basic needs. So kind of that hierarchy of basic needs. Everyone needs food, shelter, and family, that type of thing. And so when those 3 break down, you can't even start accessing services when you don't have those key things. I think the other thing that came out really strongly was the importance of mental health and having services, and that whole access thing again, like, okay, well, if this is happening to my kid, where do I go and where can I get it immediately? I don't need it tomorrow, I need it now. And so that quick, responsive access for those higher level services. And I think the other thing that came out is that whole juvenile justice piece related to gangs and preventing, and some frustration saying, I needed this prevention to happen earlier, and now I'm like, what can I do now when it's already happening and my kid's in that cycle and I can't get him or her out of that cycle? So that really strong prevention piece, I think, came across really strongly.
They also spent time listening to the people inside the juvenile justice system, people who also see the importance of early intervention.
I think right now we need to find a way to wrap our arms around at-risk families and kids who are showing the need. If we don't develop that, we're going to be having the same interview in 10 years, only it'll be some new Scott, I'm sure. I'm really saying, how do we have a paradigm shift where services don't come with a stigma? But I think that's a big start. But then we would change it by being assessment driven. If you don't look at a behavior and look to see what's behind that behavior, the first few times with a youth, you're beginning to lose them. All of a sudden, they're feeling like they're not good enough to be in that school or that classroom or that center, and then that just builds the wall. So I think what we really need. We need to be assessment driven on the back end, because those are our neediest kids that need the most dosage and the most focused treatment. So we need to assess those kids, get them in, get them out. I want to go back to the day when a kid went to a residential and it was the first time and they went back home and it stood a great chance of working out.
Yeah, this is one thing I've always said about law enforcement is we're really good at responding and investigating crime in the short term, but we're not really great at long-term walking with victims and providing resources in the long run. And that's another thing that I value, partnership with Family Resources, is that you guys are able to do that. And having this relationship, being able to call and say, hey, Emily, can you hook these guys up with this? It helps everybody in the end.
Especially what you guys do with the victims of homicides. When I was able to go to the Day of Remembrance celebration, and just to see that relationship that your staff have with, those are some of our most challenged citizens in our community, that they've gone through so much trauma and will continue. It doesn't get any better, but due to the resources that you have here at Family Resources, you are walking with them through that journey.
As the project neared completion, the people involved had the opportunity to reflect back on lessons learned and to look forward toward the path ahead.
There's stuff we can do. Like, it's not just research in a bubble. Like, there's action we can take from this to improve our community's health overall.
I think the year and a half of doing research and interviews and focus groups and surveys really has validated what we knew to begin with, that when families' needs are unaddressed, it creates a domino effect for the children that live in the home. And I think we learned...
And for generations.
Yeah.
Is the part that keeps coming up.
I think we learned that our guts were right, and it was just affirming and validating to know that the way we were thinking was backed up with the research, and the research was local, right? It was our partners, other people in this field, people who live in our community. So when we try and explain to funders or systems, we think we need to do it differently, we have the research to back it up. We really do have the research to back it up, and it's right here from our community. I think we also learned that we're not gonna move mountains or do anything differently without our partners. And that has been, that's been my favorite part, really, is working with partner organizations and seeing how if we all are rowing in the same direction, we really can enact huge system-wide change. And I think there's more to come. I think we have just tipped the first domino.
My hope is that as this project kind of reaches final completion, that we're able to meet with legislators to show the work that we did, provide our report. We also have a documentary that we're doing, and be able to kind of help open their eyes to what's the reality for the kids and families that we serve and the kids and families that are in our community. And then where could maybe they assist with some funding?
Because all the research is capable of doing is pointing in the right direction. It is up to the people of this community to pave the path forward, which will require more time.
Come support these kids. Come support them at school, detention center, here, at home, the Y. Just come support these kids, come help them out, talk to them, ask what they need. We need more leaders. We need more people to step up. Please step up.
More talent.
Bring some people in who are genuinely want to be there for the kids.
I think life is about relationships, right? It's about knowing people.
And more treasure.
There's no money for these things. A lot of things are getting cut. Like I said, in the school, all the extracurricular activities were being cut because of the money.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no money, there's no way to do it, because you can have people volunteer their time, but how many people are going to be able to just volunteer their time?
The one that really has surprised me, and I remember because it's only a couple days ago, but Nicole had sent me an email about a really good meeting that she'd had, and my response to her was, you plant one seed and it's really kind of amazing what a beautiful garden it turns into. And that's maybe one thing that we really want to be involved with as time goes on, is how can we, our family, be an asset in spreading the word and hopefully getting other people to want to be a part financially of what we're trying to build.
I always try to come from the perspective that how would I want someone to act if this was my child? Like, I don't think these are other people's kids. I think this is how we treat children.
It will take a commitment to caring for our kids because we know that kids deserve to be cared for.
That's one of the big things, is just be there just as much as you can.
And it will take partners like you to help us make it happen.
But to have a program that somebody says, oh, if you want to see a really good program, go to Davenport, Iowa. Talk to the folks at Family Resources. They've figured it out. Wouldn't that be great?